Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Trails in the Pod. I'm Colin. That's Kevin.
We got a great episode for you all today about Quest in games, and we have a lot to talk about. But first, Colin, we have some listener responses to our question of the week from last episode. What quest do you like and why? What do you dislike and why? We got some good responses, some good feedback, so we thought we'd read them out and talk about them first.
Absolutely.
So Ben from Twitter says, I'm not the biggest Elder Scrolls fan, but the Final Thieves Guild quest in Oblivion is one of my favorite quests ever. You literally get to rob the Elder Scrolls library, and the entire quest line leading up to it pays off perfectly. And I have to say, I agree with this. The quest for the major guilds in Oblivion are top notch. They're so well done, a lot better than Skyrim, and the Thieves Guild quests always are a hit.
Sure. I mean, I've never really played Oblivion, but I have heard fantastic things about the Thieves Guild. It's one of those, things that as a gamer, you just know is good by the way people talk about it. I'm inclined to agree, even without any real experience. Then Kate from Twitter, we talked before on Twitter as well, she stated that her favorite quest is from Fallout 1, the Junktown quest, where you take sides in a feud between the mayor or head of the town guard, Gillian Darkwater, or the owner of the casino, Gizmo. One potential option you can take involves wearing a wiretap to try and go to confession out of Gizmo. I also find it interesting how the two choices in this quest originally had very different endings, but said endings were revised to make the player feel less taken aback by the consequences of their choices.
Now, Colin, I want to say this is kind of, to me, a bit of a cop-out. Actions have consequences, and if a game presents two different ways of accomplishing the same goal or the quest or whatever, the player should feel their action, their choices should matter. They get to do something different with A than B, Gizmo or the mayor. Having examples, having quests where it's all just the illusion of choice, it feels a bit cheapened to me. What do you think?
I mean, I definitely hear what you're saying. One of the best things about games like the Outer Worlds, for instance, is that at least early on, quests have like very stark X or Y choices, and you agonize over them and you think about them. And the reason why those choices are agonizing is because they seem to have some kind of consequence. That being said, I do think it depends on how the quest fits in with the entire part of the game, because one could conceive of a quest in which, like, let's say that there's a town with a specialty store in it that has some of the best items in the game, or some side quests that maybe you hadn't gotten to yet. And then one of the choices in the quest that you're doing is to nuke that town or to destroy it completely. Without knowing that that's going to happen, you make that choice and then you lock yourself out of future content. I could see how that's seen as a bad design choice, in which case you'd want to pare it back.
Yeah, so I think locking out of a lot of content should be avoided. But having different outcomes on a more manageable level, you get maybe different weapons or different items of comparable value or experience, or different places to go. I think if it's comparable, that's good. You don't feel like, again, we've harped on this so often, you don't feel like I've wasted my time doing something in this game. I better do a new save.
I think that also we need to distinguish, and we should distinguish it when we actually get to our main topics, is that there's a difference between a narrative difference and a gameplay difference, right? So you can tell two completely different stories, but your power level stays the same. Or you can tell similar stories, but one choice will have like clearly better gameplay outcomes. And you need to find the balance for that.
If one choice has better, especially gameplay outcomes, that is the story, the game parameters telling you this is the right choice that you should be making. And it feels like the choice is taken away if one is clearly better.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, especially if so not every player is a min-maxer, but especially if you have played MMOs in the past or you play a lot of RPGs in which you're kind of trained to do that, then yes, that's how the game is telling you to proceed. Basically, what we took is a very positive answer, shat all over it, and made it into a negative thing. So let's get to Kate's quest that she dislikes. So
Yes.
maybe we can agree with that. She states that she dislikes pretty much any quest that involves collecting X number of things. Trails usually has much more interesting quests, but they occasionally have ingredient hunting quests or whatnot. I would also say that games like Xenoblade Chronicles, from the little bit that I've played, like I don't do those side quests because it's that MMO-esque, just go get me 3 rat asses and I'll give you some money. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, it doesn't teach you anything new about the characters, about the plot, about the world, about this story you are experiencing. And so these fetch quests feel like padding, like wastes of time.
I think that one of the ways that a game can get around that is to narratively tie it in. So, for example, in Roland, in the I think it was in the prologue, even there's this guy who needs a mushroom, and you need to go find him that mushroom so he can cook with it. You do that, and it feels like you run into the forest, you grab it, you come back. You do run into that character later when you get to the village in front of Ruan, I think. They're like, okay, so it's another character. We already have a preconceived relationship with him. We gain a little bit more character development. And I can tell you, as a veteran of the series, you will meet that character again, not even just in Trails, but like in other arcs. And
Colin,
yes,
I assume he's the main villain of the Hajimari games.
yes, absolutely. That's the leader of Ouroboros. No, but you do run into him quite often throughout the series, and it becomes kind of a trope where like, oh, you need to go get an ingredient. Oh, this guy, he's kind of a foodie kind of dude or a businessman, and as you breed familiarity, you get a little bit of attachment. It makes the world feel better.
But also, the key word, you could also play devil's advocate and say that's the prologue. We have the introduction of some gameplay, mechanics, cooking, recipes, ingredient gathering, and so on. So, how would we feel if we had something like this in, say, chapter 2 or 3 when we're much more established? Would it be any different? Maybe.
I'm pretty sure that we did have quests like that in chapter 2. That's my question to you. Do you feel any different? I just do it as a matter of course.
Yes, I do feel different. I give a lot of leeway in either prologue, first chapter, whatever, introducing gameplay mechanics. Here's how to go places, here's how to do whatever. And so, fetch quests here, I give a lot of leeway too, because maybe they're doing here's how to craft armor or weapons, here's how to cook. And you can only do that by acting. I would rather told go here and then show how to do it than just get a giant wall of text.
No, I get that. So essentially, what we're saying is that these collecting X number of quests, X number of items, types of quests, have their place, but just having them all willy nilly everywhere is bad game design. Using them judiciously can be good game design.
Skyrim does this to excess. They're everywhere. They don't feel like you are being rewarded for doing them.
Sure. Well, we want to thank our listeners who answered our question. Obviously, we just right out the gate, we got some good conversation out of it, some good ideas for the rest of the episode. So we very much appreciate it. And we have a new question for all of you. And that question is, when did Trails click for you? When did you decide to play this expansive and ever-growing series? What were the key factors? What made you decide, you know what, I'm going to invest hours of my life into this one world? I know for me, it was because COVID hit and I wanted something to dig into. And I just saw a couple of Reddit posts talking about how this was the best written RPG series ever. And I was intrigued by the idea of having like 8 games at the time, all in one universe. So I dug in.
Oh, 8 was Cold Steel 4 not out yet?
No, I had to wait months. I mean, it was out in Japan. I could have done the spreadsheet, but it was like came out in October and I finished up around September, I think. So I was like, yeah, I'll wait the 2 months.
For me, it was August 2021, just less than a year ago. I was in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, and I just thought, I've played Fire Emblem Three Houses 7 times by that point.
Fucking ridiculous.
And like, wow, JRPGs are awesome. I like lots of world building and characters and all of that. So I was at Target because my parents' dog wouldn't eat with me in the house. And then I asked Colin about this series I saw because he knew a lot about JRPGs. I picked up Cold Steel 1 and then Trails 1, played Cold Steel 1, but then got sidetracked. And then we later came to the talking about having a podcast for Trails in the Sky, the series. And it's been such a journey so far. We just beat Trails in the Sky 1, me last night, Colin right before this episode drops. And next week's episode is going to be absolutely bonkers. I have some very strong opinions about Joshua.
Well, I hope our listeners look forward to that. We should note that you say I have beaten it, and I will probably have it beaten by the time this goes live, but I have not beaten it yet. I mean, I beat it years ago, so I know what goes on. But my plan is that we finish this episode, I edit it, and then I go beat that game. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But we're here to talk about quests, quest design, the distinction between main quests, side quests, all of this kind of stuff. So Kevin, question for you. What is actually a quest? What distinguishes that from pure gameplay?
So, to me, to answer this question, we have to do a bit of intellectual genealogy. Where does a quest in a video game come from? And we have to go back to tabletop gaming with Sheets, Dungeons and Dragons, where quests are, it's what allowed the game master to create and execute the gameplay sessions, the story, the narrative for his or her players. And main quest, side quest, the delineations, unless you're going off a quest handbook, are oftentimes so much less pronounced.
Yes.
It's you know this. You play D&D on the regular. What makes one over the other? You don't have this preceding distinction. If anything, it may come in the end or after the quest is done, but it enables gameplay in a fact. And I think we can see some of this with quests in video games. To me, the quest is the external game-induced modification to how the game is played, how the player experiences the game. It gives form and meaning to.
Okay. I think that we're kind of on the same page, but the way I've been thinking about it is a bit different. Because you're right that yes, it comes from D&D, but when you're playing D&D, I don't think like, okay, today we're working on main quest, today we're working on side quest. You have the main quest in the back of your mind, but you're dealing with whatever the DM's throwing at you at that session, right? And sometimes that's true even in video games. So like if you play Pokemon games, there is a main quest. The main quest is get 8 gym badges and go beat the Elite Four. There's no quest menu that tells you this is the main quest. There are stuff that pops up along the way some of it's optional. You could call these side quests if you already know about the distinction, but they don't feel like side quests. They just feel like content that you can do in the game, like show this one guy this type of Pokemon to get this kind of item, that kind of deal. But then you have games like the Trail series, you have games like the Xenoblade series that quite explicitly state, here's a main quest, here's a bunch of side quests. And the difference is the existence of the quest system itself, where the game is telling you that my gameplay is bracketed into different sections that you can take in whatever order that you want. And not every game is like that.
Not just the gameplay system, but the keeping of records, the information storage and information retrieval. It makes archival, visual, oftentimes differences between main and side quest. The mass of information necessitates an archive. The archive needs categories. The categories separate side from main.
So I agree with you, but what does other than the fact that the game might say this is a side quest, this is a main quest, I do think that we have to distinguish for ourselves what is the difference.
Yes. To me, I think the base most unhelpful definition is side quests are not mandatory for progression of the main narrative. And I say this, it's unhelpful because they come in all shapes and flavors. Sometimes you have very important stuff
Mhm.
in side quests for characters, for plot, whatever. Sometimes they are that. They are optional. They add flavor. They are not the meal itself.
I mean, there was a quest in chapter 2, I believe, when we were in Rouen that you did not do. That does have plot significance later on down the line.
The Phantom Bee.
The Phantom Bee quest, yeah, and that is a case in which by doing that quest, you kind of have like when you do encounter this character later on down the line, you already have some sense of context of who this guy is and your run-ins with him before. Whereas if you don't do it, it just comes out of the blue.
Does the game intend for you to have this context, do you think?
Yes, I do.
So it's really a side quest. The game chastises you through its absence for not playing.
I mean, well, you know what? You're going to have to tell me when you get to that point because you didn't do the quest. And I'm curious to see how the game changes its dialogue. Because if you import your save data, the game will know if you've done it or not. So we'll have to discuss that. But what's interesting to me is how some games, like I think some games do make side quests completely optional. Or a lot of the times very optional. The Xenoblade series strikes me as one where it's quite like that, just as Kate was pointing out in general, that, you have these go collect 10 rat asses and I'll give you some money. They're side quests, but by not doing them, I don't think that you lose anything. Maybe there are more narratively involved quests in those games. I haven't beaten them. I've just kind of dipped my toes in it, but that's the impression that I get, that there's not. Same thing with even stuff like Fire Emblem Three Houses. There are some quests in there that do some, story development for different characters, but a lot of them are just like extra battles that you do because you can do them.
And these side quests for the characters, these paralogs, on the one hand, I really enjoy getting to know the characters more, and especially in combinations you may not think about but do make sense. Say Dorothea and Ingrid in Three Houses. One's a knight, one's a mage, former diva, but they are both defined by these societal expectations of their gender, trying to force them into becoming mothers and wives and how they relate to society. And so they team up against an aggressive suitor they both have had conflict with to assert their, independence and personhood outside of gender norms. It's great. But the flip side of stuff like this is because it's optional, because you may not do them, you may not even have either in your house or party or whatever for these games, the main narrative cannot proceed with what we learn about them in side quests, in paralogs, whatever. The main narrative cannot take this into account. So it feels separate, it feels segregated sometimes, the dissonance with the world, with the plot, with the characters in the main quest, and what we learn through the optional items.
Yeah, I think that quest is a really good example of how side quests can be used to try to solve a narrative problem, but sometimes fails because the way that game is structured, everybody's divided into your house. Almost all of the conversations you see are between the main character and another character, or two characters together with supports. But as you say, Dorothea and Ingrid are in two different houses, which means that normally they do not interact. In order to build up the bonds between different characters, you have to bring them into combat together, have them fight side by side, maybe do some bonding events during your free time. But nothing is going to tell the player, hey, I should be pairing up Dorothea and Ingrid in order to unlock these supports and get that story, until you get to that quest, right? You get to that quest, you see, oh, there's this pre-existing relationship. The weird thing then is, though, they seem to have like this deep friendship that almost seems like as one of their teachers, you should know about it, and you learn about it at that moment. And like I was playing Blue Lions, and I invited Dorothea into my house, and because I had played Black Eagles before, and I really like Dorothea. But even in bringing Dorothea into my house, now it's been, established that Ingrid and Dorothea have this relationship, but it never comes up. Like nobody ever gives a crap that Dorothea is in my house. She stands there, but nobody reacts to it.
Maybe they're like, please, Professor, I'm not hungry. Don't make me eat anymore. And the other, you would think would be really interesting items. Why would someone abandoned on the streets of the imperial capital, a life in the opera in the Adrestian capital of Endor, why would she abandon it all for the traditional conservative kingdom of Fargus? It's the bonds she has, assumedly, with the professor, with people like Ingrid and so forth. But the player may not play this. They may miss it. They may decide not to do it. So they cannot be referenced in the main game itself. And it's oftentimes a wasted opportunity, I think, when these things would enrich the experience are not introduced in the main item.
So I think we've concentrated a lot on that example and like seeing the failure of
Yes.
the side quest to provide you with narrative context. But what do you think a successful one looks like?
Oh, it's easy, Colin. Mass Effect 2 with the loyalty missions of the characters you recruit for the suicide mission.
See, I see what you're saying, and I want to get your take on it. But for me, I almost hesitate to call those side quests. They're side quests, technically speaking, because yes, you can beat the game without doing them. But the game is so character driven that you want to do them. And the consequences of not doing them means that some of these people are going to die. So to like, yeah, they're side quests, but they feel so integrated to it that I don't think you're really playing Mass Effect 2 if you don't do them.
So, what makes a side quest then? What makes it something beyond it's optional? What more makes it a side quest?
I mean, that's what I mean, I think that the core distinction is that it's optional. I do disagree with you on that. The main quest is what you do in order to beat the game, and the side quests are everything else. What I'm saying is that I think there's a difference between form and feel. In
Okay.
form, the character side missions are side missions, but in feel, the as you get into them and you get your bonds with the character and what the game actually expects you to have done by the end of it, it feels like a main quest. And maybe that's the sign of a successful system where you want to do these quests. Trails, I think, does a similar job, at least in later games, where like if I'm playing a Trails game, I don't say, oh, I don't really want to do this side quest, I'm just not going to do it. I'm a bracer, I'm a whatever, it's my job to do these quests, and I go and do them.
So, what do you think then? What's a really good clarion example of games with really good side quests that are not side quest in name only,
Which are,
besides Trails?
I mean, it's the most cliche answer to give, but Witcher 3 is the first one that comes to my mind. I mean, last time you talked about how the Red Baron quest was one of your favorite quest lines, and I'm like, damn it, I wish you hadn't said that, because that's what I was going to say. Although you said it much better than I can, because I haven't played it in a long time. But that games like that, it really takes advantage of the open world feel, number one. But this, you can tell that the side quests in that game are created in such a way that they're compelling in and of themselves. You don't have to do them. You know, I stopped doing side quests about 3/4 of the way through, but if you're playing Witcher 3, you really should.
Colin, it's the bloody bearding, you filthy casual.
I'm sorry, I am a filthy casual. You know, I was thinking about my frozen pizza
The Red Baron is a German fighter ace.
and a brand of frozen pizza.
So, Colin, I want to get your opinion on another flavor of side quests.
Okay.
Ones where to get the true ending, you need to do side quests that are very clearly not part of the game, the main quest line, where it's separate from like how in Mass Effect 2, it's
Mhm.
yeah, the side quest, but the game tells you, hey, are they loyal? If not, that could be important. What about in JRPGs, say Persona or other items where you have to do non-main gameplay items, quest character interactions to get the quote golden or the true ending?
Yeah, so Persona 5 Royal is a good example of this. Trails of Cold Steel 4 is an example of this, as well, as I will be reminding you when we get to the end of that game so you don't fuck it up.
In
Uh,
5 years?
yeah, exactly. Man, like we calculated how long it's going to take us to get through the first trilogy. We're going to be done in like May of next year, like at the pace that we're going. So maybe we'll look into that. But in any case, so okay, let's start with Persona 5. The way that Persona 5 Royal works is that you have your base game, which is already a huge thing. It was that was made on the PS3. The main storyline has stayed the same, and it has a satisfying ending. That's the ending of Persona 5. But if you have your bonding events with a couple of characters up to a certain level, you unlock the final chapter, which is the extra content that Royal has. It incorporates a new character that's been introduced, and it's good in its own right. And of course, if you're playing the Royal version, you want to do that. I like the concept because the concept is there are some new characters. Here you are rewarded for investigating those characters and bonding with them. The problem that I have with the system is that it does not tell you that you have to do this in order to unlock the final ending. And these are time gated. You can run out of time. So I remember very distinctly just happening upon this on Google one day that I needed to get my rank up with Maruki. And I was stayed up to like 3 a.m. just to make sure that I did that so I wouldn't forget. And I'm glad that I did because I could play the final content. But if I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't have known.
So I've not played Persona 5, but I've read up a lot about it for fan fiction. Okay, moving on. But that's dozens and dozens of hours that you may expend to find, wait, where's this third semester? What do you mean I missed a bonding event in the summer
Right.
and I can't do it? So there's two schools of thought. One, games should not handhold you. That's why they have it. That's why they have hidden side quests in a lot, especially trails, for example. But on the other hand, with the amount of resources and energy, is this really fair to you can't get Maruki and Akechi and the gymnast with the third semester unless you do this. It was sort of telling you, hey, this could be important, but unless the game makes a very clear meta game to unlock the third semester, you need to do this for the extra gameplay. To unlock the golden ending where all of the lords live, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Is it fair?
I don't think that it's fair, but I think that's something else that we have to distinguish. What we have to decide for ourselves is number one, what's beating a game? Does it mean that you have gotten the true ending? And we have to evaluate how important getting that true ending is. So here we have two divergent cases. With Persona 5 Royal, I think that the only real importance of getting the third semester and getting the true ending is I'm playing Persona 5 Royal, there's content there, I want to experience that story. It doesn't impact anything else. In fact, the sequel, Persona 5 Strikers, is not a sequel to Persona 5 Royal. It doesn't include those characters. So if you don't play Persona 5 Royal, you can play its sequel and not have any problems. Trails of Cold Steel 4. I'm not going to tell you what's going on. You will find this out in about 2 years. But the way that the ending part is structured is that there are two endings that you can get. One, if you don't do certain side quests near the end of the game, and one if you do. But no matter what, you will get the first ending first. And it's a good ending. I really liked the first ending. I thought it was a really good ending to the arc. And you might not know that in order to unlock the next ending, you then have to restart the game and do it again. And then things will change a little bit. And then you get what's considered to be the true ending to that game, which is a different ending, like a very different ending. Then you have to restart again in order to get access to a secret cutscene that I did not know about. And you need to do all of this because from what I understand, all of these endings matter for Hajimari.
So they want you to play this game, which I assume is quite long, not one, not two.
No. It's not like that. You like restart right in front of the final fight, and then you go through stuff.
Okay, so it's not.
You're not replaying this 120-hour RPG again.
Or it's not congrats. You're just starting at Thor's Academy.
But okay, Trails of Cold Steel 2.
Question: how obvious is this side quest or whatever in the end of Cold Steel 4? Is it like, hey player, this can be important, check it out?
So the characters that these side quests are revolved around as veterans of the series, like you want to do them. They're very important side quests to do, narratively speaking. So you're definitely like nudged to go take care of that. And some of the characters say like, we have some important business that we should take care of before we go into the final dungeon. But it's not like you get a pop-up box saying, hey, do this, dumbass, because otherwise you're not going to get the full experience. Google had to tell me about that. With Trails of Cold Steel 2, there is a side quest that you can only access through a new game plus that is really important for the lore of Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4. So I just looked them up on YouTube because I'm not going to do that again. Now I can actually experience it when we get to that game, but you won't be able to. And I think that's even worse. You lock a plot important side quest behind a second playthrough.
It's insane. It is so weird because who has the free time to replay 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever hour game such that you want to do it soon enough to get the plot information stuff, but also like, I just did this. You are asking me to go do it again?
Yeah, exactly. That's which is why I didn't do that. I was just like, fuck it, I'm playing Trails of Cold Steel 3. Let me look up these side quests
On
on YouTube.
YouTube. I think that segues into a nice conversational topic in general. How hard to get should these hidden quests be? What's a good balance between explorer and you have to use a guide? To me, using a guide breaks me out of the immersion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it has to be like there should be hidden quests. There should be reasons for you to go off the beaten path, to talk to people, to explore. And those
Yes.
side quests should be good. You know, they can have like fun stories in and of themselves, but it should be limited in the impact of the overall narrative, because otherwise then you're risking your player missing really important aspects of the main plot.
Okay, so I think what should not be done with side quests is you have to talk to this person maybe in a different area after clearing whatever. Maybe it's for the copy of the liberal news or just something. To me, if you have to go do minutia, boring tedium, that's not so cool. But if it feels natural within the confines of the story, like, oh, maybe I should go back to this area because the plot that we just had referenced something going on there. Or I wonder how so and so is taking the news that maybe her friend is now a thief or whatever. But you must go between the hours of 8 and 12 to talk to the desk guard while having the hat of mysteries equipped.
You
It
don't
should
even
feel possible
you don't
within the
even know it,
game.
but what you're doing is describing how the Trail series handles its novels. Because like there are some parts where you have to talk to one specific guard at one specific time in order to get that book, and you want to get all of the books in order to unlock some of the best weapons in the game. But neither of us are doing that because the game does not show you how to do that, and it's boring as shit to run around talking to everybody to find them.
Why do the game developers do this? One. And two, what is their intent for how this content should be accessed? I wonder. Like, why, how do they think most people will do this?
So I think that for Trails in particular, they're doing it this way because they have put in the effort to make every single NPC change their dialogue after a main story beat. And so a lot of hardcore players will literally talk to every single NPC in order to see what has changed insofar as they are able to do so. Like sometimes different towns are blocked off and stuff like that, right? And so in that way, it's kind of rewarding players for going the extra mile to experience all of that content, slash a nudge to get players to do that. But something that I wanted to bring up as well on a more positive side, because you had brought up how like you should want to go explore, areas that you visited before. And I think that there are some systems and that utilize side quests in that way to really bring the world to a cohesive whole. So the problem with Trails, at least in these early games, is that all of your side quests are going to revolve around the area that you're in, which means that, okay, as soon as I leave Rouen and I head to Zeiss, I see no reason to go back to Rouen, even if I like the characters that are there. But
Can you?
sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I don't know
Oh
if you can
no.
go back to Rouen. Maybe you can.
I mean, but you can for some cities
Yeah,
go
you can.
back. Oh
Yes.
wow.
Like I'm pretty sure there's nothing stopping you running back to Bose after you finish after you get to Rouen. There's nothing stopping you. There is something stopping you going from Bose to Roland, so that gate is blocked. But in any case, some systems do this really well. Like in Bug Fables, which I will say again is a fucking amazing game, and you should definitely go play it. It has a very localized side quest structure in which you get all of your side quests through a bulletin board in the main city, but all of these quests can send you back to areas that you've already been to, and sometimes there are actually like interesting stories that you encounter that way. And by doing that enough, you start to, even though there's a chapter structure that takes you to different locations for each chapter, it makes the world feel like a cohesive whole, a world that you're actually living in, because you have these moments of having to go back and it's still being relevant. The Crossbell games do this really well.
So that's a good way of doing it. You make the player themselves for their own internal reasons of the story and characters. I want to go back and see how my actions and the story have affected these people I've come to know and care about.
I would say so.
Now, Colin, you said these kind of side quests, these hidden ones, should be good, but more broadly speaking, what does that mean exactly? What makes it good?
Yeah, I mean that's the age-old question since Plato. What is the good, right? Uh, but I think in terms of side quests, we have to delineate between two different aspects. One, even three different aspects. One of which is plot, the other is gameplay, and the third is reward. Because we definitely need to talk about what kind of rewards we should get from these.
For plot and gameplay, maybe a category that links them should be method or ways of completion.
I guess, yeah. But I am currently in the mindset of dividing the two because I think that's important for this current discussion. But I'm curious to see how you approach it with merging them in. So on the one hand, like you find a hidden side quest, right? There should be some kind of like narrative hook that is like, oh, this is interesting. I should really look into this. So for instance, there's a really good example in chapter 2 where you're heading back from Rouen to like go to the orphanage or something. And if you run along on the beach and you enter into like a little alcove, you'll end up rescuing somebody from being attacked by monsters. And that guy turns out to be a treasure hunter that will then give you a treasure map to go and find the treasure that he was looking for. And then that also has some nice rewards. You get a nice upgrade for Joshua in there, but it's also like it's an interesting narrative hook because it's something a little bit different than you normally do. There's a little bit of aspects of the lore of the world that are introduced into that because you have this ancient piracy and then a shipwreck, that kind of stuff. So all of that, you finish it and then you can say something like, I'm really glad I ran into that guy. You feel like your time wasn't wasted. You feel rewarded for doing it, and it's a good experience along the way.
For me, a side quest, to me, it's about the characters. What do I learn about the characters? Because I kind of segregate the main plot to the main quest line. And if I'm doing side quest, I want to know more about the world in which I'm visiting briefly, whether it's the player character or a side character or a party member or whatever. I feel like they really, or they should give them a chance to shine.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but I think there are different ways you can do that. So, like,
Yeah.
some of them are going to be like very melodramatic. Like, here's an important moment that, here's a heavy narrative that you can go through. But also sometimes you can have like very silly, very funny side quests, but that still
Yeah.
achieves that same characterization either of the world or of different characters. And because of the difference between main quest and side quest, it can make that side quest feel even more special. The Yakuza series is like masters at doing that where you have a very serious main quest and some hilarious side quests.
Sometimes that tonal dissonance is really effective, and also sometimes it's just needed. It's a palate cleanser.
Yeah, for sure. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet that we do need to is gameplay rewards. Because it's one thing to say that you're rewarded by you have a cool plot line, and that's true. But to me, that's like the enjoyable aspect while doing it. But if I walk away from that and I don't feel like it was worth it to do it at all, I feel a little bit cheated, especially if it's like difficult.
Mhm. So for me, they should be, and this is not going to be any helpful whatsoever, meaningful, but not game breaking in terms of weapons, armor, items, XP, whatever.
All right, so I'm going to pull a classic move that our advisor would do and say, Kevin, you must be more precise.
Okay, so to give a bit more of a serious answer, I think that you need some way of not just, say, any monsters or XP that you gain as a natural course of doing the side quest, but the act of completion should give you a reward beyond that is tangible within the gameplay aspects, not just the narrative
Mhm.
aspects. And if it's a character side quest, maybe it could be a new ability or advancement or item, weapon, armor locked unique to them. Family heirloom, they prove themselves worthy or whatever. I tend to like more than just XP. I want some sort of tangible reminder about, hey, I got this weapon or armor in a side quest. That was really cool. Now I'm going to use it. But then that raises the question of in RPGs with progression, weapons and armor becomes eventually outdated. That could be a good maybe 10-minute sidebar in a main episode. Whether should you be able to upgrade ad infinitum or the natural progression of once a level map chapter exchange for new weapons and armor. So to make a short story long, tangible weapons and armor is what I like most. That is a mark of having done it good, but not great.
What do you think about the rewards that the side quests and Trails of FC give you, which is mostly money and BP?
Oh, money is so hard to come by.
Yeah.
I thought they were good because it allows me to get new and better weapons and armor and equipment. What say you? BP. I never like. I don't get the use of BP in the game. I still don't.
So BP will decide your bracer rank when you finally become
Yeah.
a senior bracer, but that's more like a flavor thing. BP is mostly there as a way to urge you to do more side quests, and as you go up in the ranks, you get rewards. Some of them can be quite good, but I agree with you that the in this game in particular, and in Trails in particular, basically the side quests are your income stream. It's how you're going to earn money to buy equipment. Yes, you can convert Septium near the end of the game. You should, because you're not going to be using it all that much, and money can be more helpful in buying things like reviving items or ingredients or what have you. But it only works because money is so hard to come by. If money were like given with monster fights, for instance, it would be an awful system, because then I could have just grinded this money out.
Yeah, but I do like games that do not have monsters drop lots of money. I don't like in chapter two feeling I have so much I can buy everything. I like in Trails FC so much. I liked it so much that I had to be careful. What did I buy for who? Did I buy permanent or expendables? How did I allocate this insufficient amount to do everything I wanted? What did I need?
Mhm.
By the end of the game, it's like, here's have 50,000 lira for routine, quest completions.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of glad that they give you a lot of money at the end, because some of the items that you're going to need, well, you've beaten the game already, but some of the items that you need to clear the final dungeon, like celestial bombs, which are fucking useful, are also fucking expensive. So you kind of need that extra money. But at this point, it's becoming a let's talk about Trails FC Chapter 4 podcast, and we're doing that next. So why don't we wrap it up here with a couple of last things about quests?
So I think Fallout New Vegas does quests in a really awesome, awesome way because a lot of times you don't have to fight or kill. You can use your skills with medicine, with repair, with whatever to do ingenious creative solutions
Mhm.
that fit how you've constructed your character. Side quest and even some components of the main quest, oftentimes they have multiple different ways of essentially doing the same thing, but because you're going to maybe different parts of the room or doing different skill checks, it feels so much more immersive. Yes, this feels like how this character I built would solve this issue beyond point, shoot, reload. I'm going to repair or persuade or threaten or whatever.
On the same vein, something that I really like is when games use quests as a means to offer you an alternative gameplay style.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of missions in Trails the Third, where, for instance, you it turns into shoot down incoming ships for a minute, or a fishing mini game that's a lot more advanced than you see in FC. I know you love fishing quests, so I'm sure you can't wait to do that. Something that we'll have to talk about with Trails Third is that a lot of these side quests are optional, but the whole point of the game is characterization. And there is one thing in particular that you will want to see that will require you to at least complete the base level of all of these quests. And I'm not going to go more into it because you're going to have to see it, but it is like the standout moment from Trails the Third. And anybody here who is listening, who has played Trails the Third, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so all I'm saying is that when we get to that, there's going to be things that you think is optional, and I'm going to force you to do them.
Oh my. But how much does the game hint at, hey, you should do this?
It does. It very much hints at you.
Okay.
You'll see.
Okay.
Trails the Third is designed a lot differently than Trails FC and SC. It's kind of the black sheep of the series. It's not bad. It's really quite good, but it's very different.
Why?
It's more of a dungeon crawler. It's a lot more action packed. There's not really side quests. It's different stuff. I'm not going to get into it because you'll just see what it is, but it is very differently structured.
Cool.
But also the key, the main character in that game is named Kevin. So it might just be your favorite one.
Wait, it's not Estelle?
No.
Screw that.
Estelle's in it. Josh is in it, but Kevin is the main character. You'll meet Kevin in SC. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about with Quest, or shall we leave it here?
No, I think that this conversation really focused on side quests to a large degree.
Yes,
but that's a good thing. Main quest you have to do, and usually there's not much or any different ways of doing it or choosing not to do it. But for side quests and hidden quests, there's so much diversity that starts from the act of, do I engage with this? And if I do, how should I be rewarded? It's a really fertile ground for discussion. And I think we had some really interesting conversations to have that we had. And just a reminder for all of the listeners, if you have any new thoughts on quests, tell us at Trails in the Pod on Twitter or trailsinthepod@gmail.com, Trails in the Pod for the Reddit account. Very good branding name strategies we have. And also let us know for next week. When did these games click for you? I want to hear your thoughts as we begin to talk about and think about the end of this wonderful first installment in the trilogy and the first of this, 10, 11 games out so far?
Yeah. So as Kevin says, you can get in contact with us pretty much anywhere. It's Trails in the Pod, just like the name of the podcast. We will see you guys next week where we will be talking about Chapter 4.
I'm Kevin. That's Colin.
See you guys. Bye-bye.